You talk a lot about post-traumatic stress, from the fallout from the war. How did you approach arcing that as part of your season arc?
Well, that was part of that started in season 1. We wanted to have we were introducing the Charlie character, and we wanted to show how the Kaelon War, so often on these kinds of shows, there are space battles.
Yeah.
It's clear that tens of thousands of people were killed, but you never really deal with it. And we wanted to show how one person carried that trauma with her, and also one of the children on board. There are families on board, and so we wanted to show how one of a teenage boy was affected, and right out of the gate in the first season. In the first episode.
Oh, sorry, I didn't cut you off. I really remember Brannon and Seth and everybody talking about it. Once we saw the fan reaction, and also like that battle expanded in post-production. And so the scale of the death and destruction was even bigger. I mean, it was great on the page, but once you saw it, and we realized we had to service it. Like it affected the fans, like that we had made a turning point. So I think they responded to it, and that's why it had to be addressed.
One of the first questions Seth brought into the writer's room for season 3 was, if we're keeping Isaac on the bridge, we've got to deal with the fact that his species tried to wipe out all biological life. Not everyone's going to be comfortable with this, so we have to address this head on. And it gave us good stuff.
And we were, I know you have to ask a question, but we were aware of this in season 2. We had to cut the deleted golf scene for time, and we were going to put it in episode 9, like right after, and we realized tonally they wouldn't be playing golf with him, so we tabled it for that reason.
Yeah, Isaac, they wouldn't be playing golf with Isaac and having a chuckle.
Yeah.
After that.
You all have an interesting storyline tied to Isaac and the fallout of the war, and especially your first episode, you didn't come in easy with your storyline. How did you feel when you first read the scripts to your arc for the season?
Well, I was excited to come in hot, like you said, and not be like some, I came in there knowing exactly what I was after, and I think that just over the arc of the season, you're going to see a big change for her, so I'm excited for everyone to see that.
I enjoy the fact and respect the fact that it was never dropped. So from season 1 until now, you really see the fullness of their relationship, because oftentimes, writers will forget something and then it's dropped, and then the audience is wondering, well, what's going on?
Yeah, Isaac has an amazing arc this season. He starts off by pretty much being unanimously hated. And as you've already seen, he's getting back into the hearts and minds of his crew members. But will it last? Who knows? It ends in a particularly interesting way, I think. It's an honor to play. Yeah.
So when you read the script, what was your episodes, your wonderful episode? What was your reaction to your character's relationship?
I was shocked. I really was.
I think everybody was a little shocked because nobody saw it coming for real.
And not just that, it was like not only just, by the way, Tala needed something, so I was like happy for her, but like it wasn't just that she was dating John, it was like what was actually happening. Then all of a sudden she's like injuring him and he has broken bones and all this stuff, so it was like turning the pages. I'm like, what? This is wild.
And also, I think that was the first time in that scene where you try to tell me it's not going to work. John he was really hurt.
Right.
He wasn't just like whatever. He really wanted to try to figure that out. So I was shocked that relationship was going to come around.
Yeah.
You first read the script to Pam and Tommy. What was your initial reaction?
My initial reaction to reading the script was that I didn't actually know the true story of what happened. I had read the article in Rolling Stone only when the project had come my way. And just by reading the script, I was very intrigued by it, and plus the opportunity to utilize my costume design skills to bring these people to life.
Okay, so you enjoyed the script, you're interested in the project, but now you're like, oh my God, I got to actually do it. So what was your biggest costume challenge?
The biggest challenge was working with the prosthetics that Lily James had to wear. And designing things that would fit over the prosthetics, both for Sebastian and for Lily, because a lot of the stuff that we built and designed, we did before they even showed up, because the actors were on other projects, and so when they came in, they came in right before we did our camera test, and so everything had to be prepped and ready for them when they came. And that was just kind of guesstimating what the proportions were going to be, and then it was a lot of tweaking and altering and actually rebuilding a few things once we got the approved prosthetics on the actors' bodies.
In this situation, because you mentioned Lily, she's doing prosthetics, she's doing very complicated costumes. It must be a very intimate relationship working with them, because you have to make them very comfortable, because they're going to have to perform in stuff that's not easy to perform in.
Yeah, she was in full prosthetics, wigs, contacts, body makeup, and then all the costumes that we put on her, and in heels. And she has a British accent on top of that, so she was using, her skills to recreate a Canadian-American accent, because Pamela Anderson was from Canada. So yeah, she had a lot to do, and the biggest, concern I had was her comfort with, whatever we put on her on top of everything else that she was dealing with, yes.
But it also must have helped, once you found that sweet spot together, it must have been really great for her to get into the character.
Yeah, she's very collaborative, and we work together very closely, and fun. I mean, we had really fun fittings, even though we were like, what are we doing? We felt so crazy at moments. It was great.
So we have students who are interested in the costume design. So what was your entry point into the industry?
I didn't go to school for costume design. I started at, I'm a bit older, so I started in the 80s working in clothing, working with clothing companies itself. And then I kind of ventured into working on music videos in the 90s. And that's where I learned most of my techniques and trade was in the 90s, music videos were like small films. The budgets were bigger. Every band, every new song that came out, they were making a music video for and telling a story. And so there was a lot of storytelling happening then. And from there, I ventured into commercial work and did a lot of ad work. And then I just started doing films. And then TV was like the natural progression, because TV now, there's so many streaming companies and all of that they are like mini films in itself. They're just a longer version. Like a limited series is just a very long 4.5-hour movie or 5-hour movie. Yeah.
You took on Obi-Wan Kenobi. Episode 3, Vader and Obi-Wan, after decades of us dying to see the confrontation. What were your challenges of trying to set that up? We'll start with, how did you set that up? Because you knew how important the setup would be.
Well, the whole team talked so much about what Obi-Wan was experiencing in that period of time, and what might be fun to see him adventuring with little Leia doing, and how he would respond to finding out what ultimately became of his mentee, Anakin, and we just talked a lot. We just talked a lot about the different ways that could play out, and what would be the most impactful, and what would be in line with these characters that sort of belong to everybody, that everyone has grown up with and feels such personal connection to, and how to make sure that felt really momentous and emotional.
Did you have any concerns, because the audience all have their own version of what would happen? Did you guys actually think about that? Oh my God, each audience member is going to have a different take on what should happen.
Of course, yeah. I think that's a moment that people have imagined in their own minds for so many years. So yes, we talked a lot about what the fans would expect, what they wouldn't expect, how to sort of balance those expectations.
And what about, obviously the payoff is Obi-Wan kind of gets his ass kicked. What was that? Was there any decision process on like how you want to end that fight, or did you always establish, no, we want Vader to totally dominate to set up, for later?
Well, we knew where the series was gonna ultimately end, so that it could set us up for, where the movie picks up. So we sort of worked backwards from there to determine what would be the most exciting midpoint for the series. And him being triumphant is not the most epic apex, so.
It's a Luke Skywalker ending in Empire Strikes Back. Okay, so obviously you're a Star Wars fan, I can tell. What was your reaction when you saw the dailies or the first footage of the end?
Deb is such an incredible director, and Joby steered the ship of that episode so amazingly. So I was just thrilled. I mean, being on the set, even just a little bit on the volume where they shot a lot of that was like a magic trick. It was amazing.
Okay, so you take on Star Wars, which is kind of iconic, but it doesn't seem to be enough for you. You wanted to take on Willow too. Go for two. How was like jumping into the world of Willow?
Willow is one of my favorite. I used to rent it from Blockbuster all the time, over and over, and it was just thrilling. And it has less canon than Obi-Wan. There's more to invent in that world, so that was a challenge and also really exciting. And Warwick is in the series, and we got to work with him, and he's so amazing. So it was just lots and lots of fun.
So a final question, because we do for students. How did you get started? What was your entry point into writing?
I did journalism, and I did magazine articles. I wrote a book, book about my teenage years, and that was adapted for television, and that's sort of what started off my career in film and television.
So you recommend it. So it doesn't always have to be you have to start from day one. You don't have to do the Spielberg thing at age 4 shooting. You believe that you can give advice to people that can actually transfer, or everything you do early in life might actually lead you to screenwriting.
Oh, absolutely. I think all those experiences have enhanced my writing and made my particular voice what it is. And so I would just encourage, if there are students listening, to keep doing the weird, specific things that really make them jazzed. I think that ultimately leads to the best portfolio.
The first time you read the script of P-Valley, let's go back.
Wow, that's probably
Season 1. What was your reaction to it to make you want to actually be part of the show?
It's so funny because I was the key hairstylist on season 1, and I didn't even know what the P stood for. I didn't know what Valley stood. I didn't know anything. I was just like, what show am I on? So when I finally found out, I was like, I'm not telling my pastor anything about this show. But anyway, yeah, it was amazing. When I read the script, I was like, we are on to something great, and I am on board of greatness in the making, and I was so excited to be a part of something so big and something so historical, and I'm very excited about the whole production. Yeah.
All right, so you enjoy the script as a fan. Oh my God, I love this, but I actually have to work on this show. What were the biggest challenges in creating the such great looks?
The biggest challenge was just creating them, like just being in the trailer, making sure that those wigs were not gonna fall off, making sure that we had all of the things that we needed to make sure that we created perfection. Basically, when it came down to those wigs, there was a lot of wigs that we had to work with in the trailer, and we had to get them prepped and ready in time for the next episode, and there were many wigs that we had to get for each episode.
So then, to me, the relationship with the actor is critical because they obviously have to feel comfortable. And then, if the wig is not perfect for them, what is that kind of relationship? Because then you also have to create it for them and with them. It's also a very intimate relationship.
It really is. It's a very intimate relationship, and that's why I made a vow as a head of hair to make sure that everyone that walks in that trailer, we made sure we created a relationship with each and every actor that came in, so that because our thing is that they need to feel comfortable in order to go out to act on set. And so that was our main focus, was to make sure that our actors were happy, that were relaxed in the chair, and they were reading their scripts, and they had no worries about their hair. And so that was the main objective, is to make sure that they didn't have to worry about their hair. We took care of them.
And at the same time, feeling like their hair is what works for their character, too, because if they're not in that space.
Most definitely. We made sure that every single hairstyle was a great fit for the character. Of course, Katori Hall, who was amazing, she was definitely the spearhead with all of the looks, and we just kind of carried them out for her, and we made sure that they fit each character and was amazing for each character, yeah.
And for our students watching, how did you get into the industry? What was your entry point?
Goodness. Well, I started out doing high fashion models in the industry, and traveling around the world doing them for magazines and editorials, and then it just kind of snowballed from there, and I kept meeting different people, and I knew that I didn't want to be a hairstylist just standing behind a chair in the salon. I knew that was not, my attention span is so short. Like, I literally would have retired in 2 years. So I knew that was not something I wanted to do. I wanted to be out in the field doing different things, a variety of different things when it came down to hair. So yeah.
Plus, you're part of a creative, wonderful team. All artists making a film or a show together.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So it's exciting, and that's what I want to be a part of exciting things. So yeah.
So when you all right, 911. So you first read the script. What was your reaction and or oh my God, how am I going to pull this off?
Just like that, yes. Because there are, several. It's a series, so every time we get a script, the first thing you do is you start tearing through it and figuring, oh my God, how are we going to do that? Most of the time, we're ready for it. We know they do give us a little bit of a heads up when it's something huge like a tornado or volcano or something substantial like that. But sometimes it's a last minute thing. And then you just start thinking about, okay, this is how we're going to do it. This is who I'm going to talk to. This are the resources I'm going to gather to do it. So that's the beginning of the process when we first crack open the script.
Is there a different process doing a TV show versus, let's say, Planet of the Apes, for example, approaching because you have less time on a TV show per episode?
Yes, it's pretty fast. Sometimes, if we're lucky, we'll get a couple of weeks to work on it. During the crunch time at the very end, the schedule, as everyone in production knows, starts to get very compressed. So we might only have a week, maybe we only have a couple of days to do the episode.
And then features, you have a lot more time to flesh it out.
Features usually have a lot more time, though their schedules are getting a lot more compressed than they used to be.
Oh, yeah. Now, the other question is, I mean, you started long ago, all the way back to Armageddon, Walking Dead. The industry has changed so much for you in the last 25 years. How has that journey been for you, seeing how the special effects technology has gone, and visual effects has gone crazy?
Well, we're able to do so much more. What's really interesting is a long time ago doing a certain effect and doing that same kind of effect now and seeing the difference of how long it takes. For example, we did rats a long time ago. We had a horde of rats. It took forever to do those things. And then recently we had at Fuse, we had a show that had some rats running around, and how quick that came together is pretty astonishing. It shows you how far we've come. It doesn't mean that we still have more work to do, though. Just the work keeps getting expansive. Every show now, every TV show has visual effects in it.
But now it seems like you have more tools to kind of do the things you want to do.
You do have more tools. Like I said, the work there's so much more work now than it used to be. It is great having those tools, and it's always advancing. There's always new things coming out that are extremely exciting. Game changers that allow us to do more than we thought we could before.
All right, so we'll start with For All Mankind, because that's your most recent. All right, so as a director, what was your initial reaction when you first read the screenplay?
I love that show so much that I was dying to get the opportunity to work on it. My feeling was, this is genius. Like, they're just such good writers. I love an alternative narrative. It's always so engaging to have a historical narrative that's an alternative, because you're playing against expectations. So you're immediately engaged because you know that the space program was, I've been alive during the time of the space program, and to see these people write something that takes it and spins it on its ear is just so engaging and so entertaining. I mean, Gary Hart becomes president, so I was thrilled. I was so thrilled. That's one of the shows that I did my prayers at night. Please let me get an opportunity to work on that.
It must be challenging, though, because if you're doing historical, alternate future, you do have to create a reality that people will accept, but it has to be a different reality visually, too, and storytelling-wise.
Well, actually, they do an amazing job with visual effects recreating things. In my episode, there was a recreation of a debate with Bill Clinton. And so we're always, in that case, we analyze existing footage and then shoot it in a way that we're able to put together shots that, exist, and then composite shots. And so in a way, you have to make it look like that. So you're recreating a visual language so that you're not indicating any difference. You're not taking the audience out. So it's not, I mean, yes, some of it's a new language, but some of it is recreating an existing language, visual language.
But it's a challenge because most TV shows, you don't have an opportunity to do something like that. So it's almost like you're doing a feature, doing a hybrid kind of a TV feature.
Yeah, no, absolutely. In fact, I went on after that to work on something I'm really excited about that's coming out soon called 5 Days at Memorial, which, again, is about an event that happened in the past. It's about Hurricane Katrina and what happened before, during, and after at this hospital in downtown New Orleans. And, we really tried to do use archival footage in a way that, kind of bolstered and legitimized the events. And you gain credibility if you can use stuff that is network or whatever. And that's really challenging. And I think that For All Mankind is specifically because they're a series and because they've been doing it, they're particularly gifted, their post department, at achieving that. It's hard to do, but we tried to do it also with 5 Days at Memorial, which is incredible. It's going to be a great series.
We'd like to talk origins. So you started as editor.
I did.
Yeah, so how did you transition from editing to film, or what was the desire to move from editing to directing?
Well, I started editing in documentary, actually, and that's the hardest thing you can possibly do. It's like endless. The story could end here, or you could keep working for 6 months and then the story could end. You could shoot a little more and then it could end. Like, it's really like this thing. You're creating the structure that doesn't exist. I love documentaries, but I think in my heart of hearts, I had always really loved narrative and had dreamt about being involved in narrative and eventually got the opportunity to. Michael Moore, who did Roger and Me, did a feature film that I was, Jerry Peroni was hired as the editor. She was Altman's editor. And she generously let me come on and co-edit with her. And had she not, I wouldn't be standing here. And then I turned that into an editing career and wound up on Sex and the City as an editor. And then Michael Patrick King and Sarah Jessica Parker allowed me to direct, and John Melfi. And then I was able to turn that into a directing career. So, but I edited on that show for the entire run. So, there's a certain amount of, I love what I'm doing as an editor. Boy, what you're doing as a director is so cool. What you actors are doing is so cool. Like, I feel like I'm so close, but I'm not there. It would be so fun to be there. And, getting the courage to make your desires known. And that eventually, they made that happen for me, changed my life.
All right, so Why Women Kill. It takes place over different time periods and decades. From music standpoint, how challenging is it to be able to have to do several different types of music within the same episode?
It's always interesting, and you get to research all the different types of music from the decades, and it is also difficult because when music was written, say, in the 20s or 30s, language meant something different than it does now. So how do you tell a story within the music? And also, it's a great discovery platform to reinvent the catalogs to get them into the modern world. Gen Z kids now are like, oh my gosh, have you heard of this band or this song? And it's a great discovery way. It's kind of the modern way of going through your parents' vinyl collection. So it creates a lot of challenges, but also it's so fun and exciting, and also you learn stuff. I learn something new every single day in the research process.
So you think in some ways it's opened up you creativity?
Oh, it expands your creativity because you just not only have to look at a song a certain way, but you also have to understand what is the history of that song and what are those lyrics nowadays. Does it still work in the current landscape we live in? So it's kind of twofold of creativity as well as business, as well as, is this gonna fly in the current modern culture? Especially during cancel culture now, you put the wrong song in there and they're like, oh no, they're this. You have to be very careful. There's so many layers to everything now.
So then going back in time, when you first read the script, what was your initial gut reaction?
This is gonna be fun.
Is that how you decide to take a job sometimes?
Yes, I read the scripts, I meet the team, and we just have these conversations, and I'm like, this is going to be fun. I really love your creativity, your vision, or what the project is. I take every project because it's something that I love, or it's going to be fun, or challenging, or I'm going to learn something new. It's important to learn something new.
It also sounds like you just have to be on the same page with the team, the director. That always happens.
Yeah, you'll have to figure out, can you guys communicate? Because it is such a team effort, and my job is elevating their vision and their story through the sound. So you're creating this sonic character throughout everything. So what does that mean? What do they view things? And music, like art, is so subjective that, if you said, I want a song about joy, what your version of joy is different than mine. Or female empowerment, very different, very different. So it's about having those conversations and learning about that communication and realizing, art is subjective, and what they might say, this song brings me joy, and you listen to it and you're like, okay, great, but if this is what your vision entails, let's do it.
All right, so we're switching gears because we are an educational institution. How has teaching now influenced you as an artist?
Oh, I love teaching. It's just setting up the students for success in their career, which is amazing. And they teach me things all the time, and just to hear where the sonic landscape of music is going and how they're taking things that maybe I would have never thought about, maybe taking a drum, putting it through Pro Tools with Alter Boy and adding extra layers onto it, and it turns into, I'm like, is that a drum? They're teaching me things as well as I'm teaching them, because, for education, you want to set people up for success because this is their career, not a hobby. And also music is constantly changing. You don't want them to get taken advantage of. Also with technology changing as well as NFTs, traditional TV doesn't exist in the same way that it does. Also, we're literally worldwide. It's not just this is the U.S., this is Canada, this is Latin America anymore. So it's kind of opening up my mind, and I know, especially working in entertainment, people ask about burnout a lot. Teaching gets the burnout gone for me because it just gives me this energy and just inspires me, and just their excitement. And then they come up, my class is your favorite, I learned so much, thank you, and it makes my heart so big.
Okay, so Lost Andromeda. Okay, you're doing a lot of different mediums in this too. What are the challenges in creating a story, which is just expanded more than a simple, writing on the page?
What are the challenges? I think the challenges are learning how each different medium works. And so every time I'm like, ooh, I want to do this, I am actually taking on the act of learning completely new industry, music production and distribution, Web3 and blockchain. Like, how does that technology actually work? Because it's not just like pictures, there's actually a very sophisticated system. You need to understand how it works and how you make sure people always have access to those assets, and building integrations front end and back end to make sure that the experience of creating a digital asset for the individual is cool and exciting, and then actually links to the blockchain. So and then just writing books is hard enough. So I am a very imaginative person, and I like the idea of elements that create immersive experiences for readers, and so that's how that ecosystem kind of builds itself.
Now, if I'm not mistaken from research, your story has been germinating for a very long time, since childhood. Yes. How did you hang on to that since 9 years old, if I'm not mistaken?
Oh my gosh, I don't know. Okay, so from about 13 to 22, I wrote a version, 8 books, that was like very fantasy, very dragons, aliens, and everything. And then when I was an adult, without revealing my actual age, I started to imagine the story from the lens of what does the world look like right now? Fast forward 30 years, and how do we talk about the end of humanity and bridge that into this fantastical world of other galaxies and other aliens and things that I thought of when I was a kid. So the characters never left. Some of the characters are still the same. They have the same names, the same spellings. And so some of the characters are really old. Some of the characters are a little bit new. And I don't know. I think it was just that this story was meant for me, and it hasn't gone to anyone else or anywhere else. And so I meant to bring it to life.
But how is it now, after all these years? It is alive.
It is alive, yeah. It's very much alive. Like, the characters they might as well be real people. I know their backstories. I know about their families. I know what they want, Yeah, so.
So is there a different process working on a children's show versus other television shows?
Well, yeah, I think the first thing is we're going to think from a musical perspective. We're going to think about instrumentation, right? And we're going to think about tone. So a lot more sort of plucked strings and xylophones and things. Like if it's aimed at, preschool, that's another thing. Animation's such a broad spectrum. We do a lot of anime type shows, and we do stuff that's aimed more at tweens and teens. So for those kind of shows, we can treat it more like feature film or like, stuff that's aimed more at grown-ups. But it really just depends on what the show is, what the messaging of the show is, and that's sort of how we approach it.
Sorry, so when you first read the script, you're studying the script, you determine first age, area, types of music, and then you can take it from there?
Yeah, the other thing that we look at, especially on animation, especially on shows like Daniel Tiger, but it happens in all the other shows that we work on, is if there is a song in the script, if the characters are actually going to be singing any lyrics, that is where we will start. Because typically the process for that is we'd have a powwow with the director about stylistically, what kind of music they want for that, and then we will record based on their script our temp vocals, so I'll sing horribly, but then that version goes off to the actors, and the actors will listen to my vocals and then do their performance. And the cool thing about when that happens, the reason I think it's my favorite thing of all, is because it's the rare time where we, as composers, get to sort of affect how the final animation is going to come out, whereas typically we're reactive. We're reacting to the animation that they're sending us and scoring the scenes that are already done. But we did some numbers for Cat in the Hat with Martin Short singing. And so I heard the final song with Martin Short before the animation, and it was really cool to see it come back, and they put, I had a little can number in there, and sure enough, they animated all the different little bits that I had, the little musical Easter eggs I had laid down for them. So that's my favorite when that happens in a script. So
it sounds like in some ways you get more creative part of the process in this way.
Absolutely, yeah. It's nice because as composers, like I said, usually we're an afterthought or we're after the fact, but it's nice when we get a script and we get to be part of the storytelling. So. And then
for our last question, advice for students, how did you get into the film TV industry part of it?
Yeah, so basically when I was really young, and I would just give this advice to anybody breaking into the industry at all, whether you're in music or directing or writing or whatever, is watch lots of TV shows, watch lots of movies, study your craft, learn the language of film, learn the language of television, and that will sort of teach you. It's like free school, right? And so that's what I did my whole youth. I would just listen to soundtracks, and I would listen to the music in Star Wars. That was the big one for me. Without John Williams, I wouldn't be here, right? And then eventually, when I was fairly young, I realized this is what I want to do, and so I just took the steps that were needed. I already knew I had the musical skills, but I needed the technical skills, so I went to college for audio engineering and recording to get better at the parts where I knew that I was weaker. And then basically, I'm fortunate in that I have two business partners that we all write the music together. And so the three of us started a business together 22 years ago, worked our way up. I mean, it started with commercials mainly, but then we landed a reality TV show, which led into Total Drama, which led into Paw Patrol, and all these other things. So I would also just advise people to sort of follow the breadcrumbs of their careers and see, because we did not plan on getting into animation, but it sort of led us this way. And so, yeah, that's kind of my story.
Okay, Star Wars animation. What was the biggest challenge jumping into the Star Wars universe?
Not being nervous was a big challenge. When I first got the job, first of all, I couldn't believe it. I literally was jumping up and down, and I was like, oh my God, I'm going to have to write for Star Wars. And then it sets in, and it's like, okay, well, I actually need to score this, and it hopefully needs to sound good. So I think what made me the most nervous, and I think it might be the most nervous time for most composers, is after you have your meetings, you receive your direction, you go back to your studio, you write your music, and now it's time to present it. And when you present it, there's no more talking. It's like, please hit play. And when I present my music, what I always do is I mock everything up within an inch of its life. So there's nothing left to say. You know, it's not, I never need to like say, okay, but when you hear this with the live group, it will be, you know, I don't say any of that. Like the music has to speak for itself. So I remember when I sent off the music, and then I'm like, you know, like, are they gonna like it? And when I got my first feedback from them, they didn't have any notes on the music. And I literally thought to myself, okay, either they really like it, or I'm about to be fired. like it's so not right that like, you know, we're not gonna make any like, thanks, you know, thanks for playing, you know. So, but I think those sort of jitters were the hardest things to sort of get over at first. But then once I was into it and we started forming a rapport, and you talk about what I really do like every day, which is to tell stories, and you talk about what the stories are and the characters and the emotions, and then it's like, oh right, you know, this is what I do, you know, is doing this type of work. So when I was able to focus on that, it helps with the jitter.
All right, so if you're doing episodic television, anime, whatever the show, how far in advance do you want to know the character arcs, or do you want each episode to stand alone so you don't kind of give away something yourself?
That's a really interesting question because it depends on the series. Some series have an arc, and some series do not. So for example, Star Wars Forces of Destiny, they were all self-contained stories. And so that makes it a little bit easier in the sense that you're not really having to anticipate where something goes. But I will say, on the shows that I have scored that have been an arc, sometimes it's nice in a way to not even know where it's going, because in a way I'm able to stay right there with the story in the same way the audience is. So if there's going to be something that is going to be revealed later, and I don't want to necessarily tip that off with the music, sometimes it's better that I don't even know it myself, you know, and that way we're all going along the journey together.
And a final question, at what point did you realize you were working with John Williams indirectly? Like you're taking on John Williams. What was that experience when that connection happened to you?
Well, I start off as a fan, like so many, you know, and such unbelievable reverence for what John Williams does. He is truly, a giant among giants, and never did I think I would ever have a chance to work with him. I have now so fortunately been able to work with him not only on these, indirectly, you know, on these series, but also I'm an instrumentalist and I play saxophone. There was a concert once that came up where Williams was conducting his own music, and I got to play saxophone, which was, so I've now had a chance to work with him a few times. But to work with his music is incredibly humbling, and because I know I can try to know the depths of his talent, you know, the seriousness that goes into what he does, and so it really does bring another level of focus, I suppose. I'm not sure how to say it, because you know, I'm always fully, you know, invested in all of my projects, but to work with his music is to me, it's almost, you know, like well, there you go. It's tough to put it in words, right? You know, so you just want to get it right, you know, and I hope that the work that I've done, you know, if he hears it, that I hope that I hope he likes it. You know, I hope that he likes what I've done, you know, because I think about him while I'm writing it.
So you happen to direct 2 awesome episodes of one of my favorite shows, Flight Attendants. Oh, it's great. They're wonderful. So what was your initial reaction when you read your episodes?
You know, I had been prepared with the notion that I would be flying to Iceland to shoot them. And so for me, it was all about figuring out if I could pull this off in the time allotted. But also, I really loved that I was tracking Cassie's journey, her kind of frantic journey across international waters, and I just loved how funny it was, and also that I had an opportunity to kind of show off Kaylee in her, you know, in Kaylee as she's playing 4 different versions of Cassie, kind of all at the same time on screen at once. And so my job really was to figure out, okay, how am I going to shoot this in the best way possible, and also give Kaylee the space to improvise and play in her roles against herself, basically playing against different versions of herself.
Yeah, it must be very challenging for her because she was playing 4 different characters in 4 different places emotionally. Even within scene to scene, the characters are changing. What's special about Kaylee as an actress working with her?
Oh my gosh, Kaylee's a powerhouse. She's a businesswoman. She's an amazing actor. She's a comedian. And so, but at the same time, she's just a really great person. She loves animals. And so I think, as when we met, I think we both looked into each other's eyes and knew that, we were both like really, she has a really great vibe. I tried to kind of, make sure that I was providing her as nurturing and as open and as playful an atmosphere as she wanted. And she's very protective of her cast, her crew, and the show, and really wants to give everyone the space to do the best they can in the role that they have.
And it's interesting, it must be a director, because the show is very comedic and funny, but there's always equal the drama behind it, especially your character arc. How is balancing tonally the drama between the comedy and the drama?
Again, I have to give a lot of credit to the actors we're working with. With Michelle Gomez, Rosie Perez, Margaret Cho, and Kaylee Cuoco. Those were the people I primarily moved around Iceland, and those are 4 brilliantly comic actors. And so, of course, when they get in a bus together and they're sitting at the back of the bus together, they are going to be having fun. But also, what we were all paying attention to was making sure that the stakes were reading, the idea that there were life and death stakes happening. And I think that's the beauty of the show, is that it's able, through its tone, through its editing, through the way it's shot, and the way we photograph it, going inside of Kaylee's space, knowing that she's dealing with real-world issues of alcoholism, but also coming out and also just letting her be funny and as she bounces up against everybody. That's the beauty of the show, and it just kind of happens quite organically.
And we'll go a little back in time for you. You went to AFI, MFA and FI. Yep, I went to LMU MFA. I thought it was a great program. Yeah, it's. How do you think that how did your experience in AFI shape you to prepare you to be a director?
Oh, thank you. That's a really great question. So when I went to AFI, and I think this still holds true today, AFI really reveres the process of collaboration. There are 7 departments. You can specialize in being a cinematographer, production designer, editor, and so it kind of emulates the industry experience where you have people at the top of their fields all working together towards the same goal. And my job, I went to the directing program, and so my job and what I learned how to do was work with these great, talented people who are the best at their craft, and still kind of make sure that we're working towards a cohesive vision. So I think that's really, of course, a big part of learning, learning how to be a really great director at AFI also included, collaboration with actors, learning how to empathize with the actor's process. So that's what I took away from it. The other really cool thing about AFI is that they do have a history of supporting auteurs as well. So being able to understand, what does it look like to have a very distinct special vision that you can kind of offer to a show if they need it or if they ask for it.
So, okay, so you took pretty big episode of Flight Attendant. What was your initial reaction when you first read the script?
Well, first, thanks for having me. My first reaction reading the script was, oh, damn, okay, this is a big episode, because everything that season 2 is kind of, not everything, but a big portion of what it's based on emotionally, you discover is a lie. And in this episode, we explore how that came to be and watch Cassie kind of fall off the wagon and go tumbling down. And so I was honored to have the opportunity to be involved in that story, because it's a thing that a lot of people obviously experience. And it was also great for me as a director because there was an opportunity to interpret the words on the page and really take some big visual swings to tell the story that the writers had come up with.
I mean, the show is still, or even your episode is still funny. I mean, you can't help it be funny. How did you want to balance the tone where you still have humor at the beginning of the episode, but you also got to pay off the end?
Right. I mean, that's what that show does so well. You have, you know, like one of the first moments in the episode is when, for me, when she tells Marco that she just forgot about him. Like, it's so painful, you know, and then moments later you're doing a cat and mouse, you know, with the head of the CIA. So it allows you to kind of pull from different parts of your director toolkit, right? But I think what makes it resonate for me and I hope for audiences is that, you know, finding the levity in the drama and finding the drama in the comedy, like, you know, gas clutch in a stick shift. Like, I think that's what makes the show work really well.
Does it help having Kaylee Kuko, who can play both so well?
Helps very much. Helps very much to have Kaylee. Yeah.
All right. So obviously, then how did you approach the devastating scene at the end when we find out the truth? I mean, you saw it in her face. You saw it, the audience. You know the audience. How did you work with Kaylee to capture that really painful moment?
Right. I mean, Kaylee comes tapped in. She's ready. She's, you know, on target. So with something like that, and when you're working with actors like that, a lot of times it's, let's just go with what you've come prepared to do. Let's go with what you feel. And I'm there to try and keep my eye on it and see if there's anything else that we might be able to explore, or whether that's pulling something out or adding a little bit more of something. And so we knew that would be a big scene. You know, she'd already said that it was something that she was looking forward to shooting, while also being kind of challenged by it. And so I think that's what's really cool. Like, that's what you rather have things that are going to be challenging than not, right? And I think that she killed it in those scenes.
And as a director for that scene, other scenes, I guess your biggest responsibility is giving them a comfortable space to go to a dark place as an actor.
Right. Yeah, I mean, in many regards, like, going back to your first question, like when you read the script, I could argue that I'm the first audience member for the episode, and while having a unique opportunity to have a hand in how the next audience members experience it, right? Because I wasn't there for all the writing of it. And so, yeah, I think it's just, you know, trying to keep it honest.
We're at film school, so I'm curious about how did you feel NYU shaped you as a filmmaker?
NYU was great. You know, I learned the craft. I won't say I learned the business, but I think they're two entirely different things. Like, I came out with a short film that went to Sundance. I guess that was the kind of goal and point of the education to some degree. And I knew how to make films on film, because I'm a little older. And then it was like, okay, now I have this raw material that I can begin to mold as I transition from being a student to now being a professional. And so, you know, not everyone can afford it, and and it's not right for everybody, but I think it allows a unique space for you to kind of fail without the risk of, I just put, you know, all my eggs into this one project.
A question for you for writing with Stephanie Folsom, too. What was the most important aspect for both of you to capture from the comic book and translate it to the screen?
Let's see. I know for Stephanie in selling this show, she really kind of felt like there wasn't a Stand By Me for girls. You know, there wasn't some text that she could kind of grow up with where she could see herself represented in the way that this show represented her. And I think that's kind of been our battle cry as we've gone through the show. I think you'll hear the girls say it too. We encourage them to kind of give us feedback. Does this feel true? Does this feel like something that could be in your life? And that's been our North Star. For me, as a huge fan of this, I used to be a bookseller at Skylight Books in Los Angeles, and I would sell the hell out of this book because I loved it and I thought everyone should read it. And I was terrified when I heard they were making it. But that ended up being the reason to do it, especially once I found out Ryan and Cliff would be involved and that Amazon was committed to maintaining, you know, the more jagged tone that I think the comic lives or dies by. So for me, that was it. Tone was all. Yeah.
How did you balance making sure the dramatic storyline doesn't get overshadowed by the sci-fi or, you know, the kind of the genre stuff?
That was a huge challenge but we constantly reminded ourselves that if you don't care about the characters, then the rest of it just feels like spectacle. You know what I mean? Like if you're not concerned about what happens to their well-being, who they're losing, what is lost every time you have to move through time, the rest of it doesn't matter. So we always were character first, but at the same time, it's PaperGirls. Like I want to feel that scope. I'm gonna be so mad if it's just like in a box. I want to go to these big places and have this big adventure. Hiring great people, it's crass, but like having the budget was important, because we're gonna take these things on. We want to take them on, just asking ourselves like, what would I want to see if money were no object? It was a little bit of an object, but that's why we're doing multiple seasons. Yeah.
So much, thank you. Oh, and what was your reaction when you first read the script to your character, your gut reaction?
Ooh, I would say intrigued. I was intrigued. I wanted to know more about why Mac is the way she is and what happens to her. Just kind of those basic two things.
I had read the comic books by then, and we got the first script by itself at the first point, so I was like, wow, like she said, I need to know more, what happens to Tiff, what's going on, and then I was just really excited to be able to finally start filming this, and I just thought it was so similar to the comics with having the little twists that weren't in there, and I just thought the script was amazing, and the writing was so beautifully done.
What was your initial gut reaction when you first read the screenplay to your character that made you really want to jump into the story?
Oh man, well I don't usually play the heavy. This face usually plays like the sympathetic friend. So, and I was a heavy to 12-year-old girls, so that's not very tough. But to play a guy who has a lot of darkness to him, and the audience is confused by it, like, which side is this guy on? That was really fun for me, and he sort of goes back and forth. And when I took the job, I only had the first 5. Episodes 6, 7, and 8 were not finished and cleared by the studio on the network. So I kind of took the job, kind of took a blind leap, hoping the last 3 episodes, it would work out for Larry. Have you guys seen it? Okay. He takes quite a turn at the end, which you will see. But Chris is right. Chris is just a really great, thoughtful, smart writer. There was a lot to play with the character, so that made the decision really easy.
When you were, they wanted to take your story, what was the most important aspect that you really wanted to make sure was retained from the comic book that had to be go visually on the screen?
I think for me, to not be a show that is overly nostalgic and is actually anti-nostalgia. It feels like we all love fiction about the 80s, I do too, but it feels like a lot of it sometimes is looking at the 80s with these rose-colored glasses. Here's the music we love, the movies we love, the fashion we love, but Cliff and I grew up in the 80s, and we remember a lot of the terrible things, the homophobia, the bigotry, and I guess we wanted to say, look, let's not do a show about if only we could go back to this golden era, a show about progress, that I do think the world is a gradually better place, and we need to keep pushing forward, and so do a show that isn't just about nostalgia for a time gone by, and I think they really captured that perfectly.
Yeah, we didn't want either the comic or the show to be easy. I think there's a lot of ways, especially when you have, young actors, that it can go to places that kind of seem a bit like a caricature. And, but these girls feel really real. And their stories and their emotions feel very real.
What was the process collaborating with Stephanie Folsom on this project?
Stephanie is awesome. I mean, she was one of the first persons to reach out to me, and I had said so many times in interviews, this is the kind of thing that can't be a TV show. This is the thing that Hollywood is afraid of letting young women be at the forefront of a story, of 12-year-old characters, of doing something that's both really personal and small, intimate drama, and also epic in scope like a Hollywood blockbuster. And Stephanie was the first person to reach out and be like, you're a dummy. It can be done. And yes, her DNA is so important to the show. And she remains a really good friend.